Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy AA Round 2 for 20, bringing you guys week 6 of the weekly transactions. This week we got a lot of interesting trades. Make sure to keep an eye on out and see if one of your favorite coaches has made a trade this week, because it's nearing the end of the season, at least when it comes to trades. So if they haven't made one by now, next week's their last chance. But first up, we got MV, coach of the San Diego Chargers, and Steve, coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, and they're trading Meloetta for Cresselia. MV likes Cresselia on his team more than Meloetta because, one, he felt like Meloetta was pretty much like Virizion and Alakazam instead of what it did, and he figured that he didn't really see it coming to any matchups that he wouldn't just feel better off bringing Alakazam or Virizion, whereas Cresselia gives him a bulky psychic type that actually has some decent bulk in his team, because he didn't really have any quote-unquote walls on his team, and he feels that Cresselia should definitely give him a really nice wall with some reliable recovery as well. It's also a levitate user, so that means it gets a ground immunity and doesn't get bobbed by ice type moves, so it's great instead of having to rely on Lando T as a ground immunity, or a Dragonite as well, because Dragonite and Lando T both have a 4x ice weakness. Also, it has really decent bulk in general and some pretty nice coverage. You'd be surprised, but Cresselia actually has a decent specially offensive move pool and great utility moves such as Thunder Wave, Lunar Dance, and Screens as well. So he thinks it's going to help him a lot with his team. And also, maybe he hopes to further discourage people from bringing Trick Room to the Trick House. But I don't know, people still bring Trick Room, so, or at least have brought Trick Room against you in the past. So who knows what's going to happen in the future weeks. We've already had 2 people, though we have Steve on this end as well, and he thinks that losing Cress, and we have Steve on this end of the trade who feels that losing Cress for Meloetta isn't going to hurt his team too much, because Meloetta is a lot more versatile and can cause him to have a lot less momentum loss, whereas Cress, if it comes in on something that would just wall out Cress, and he has to switch it out, which kills momentum because Cress can't get something like U-turn or Volt Switch. So I think that that's really good on Steve's part as well. Hopefully Meloetta is going to be fine. He has plenty of walls anyway, so I don't think it's going to hurt him too much, but that's it for this trade. Next up, we got Gio, coach of San Francisco Giants, and he is actually dropping Gyarados for Decidueye, but don't keep that too much, because Gio literally is only dropping this for the next trade that I'm gonna keep up, because he is actually trading Decidueye right away to Chimpact, coach of the Philadelphia Scizors, for Ditto, because Ditto is one of Gio's favorite mons. He wants Remix back in his team. He feels like a lot of his opponents as well are gonna have a really hard time beating themselves in the sense, and it also gives him a really nice answer to counter setup sweeping instead of just having to rely on, for example, Haze with Tapu Fini. So he thinks this is gonna help him a lot. Also because it'll really help him take care of his electric weakness by coming in on something else that could just handle electric types. So he thinks that it'll really help as well, and also helps him a lot in prep, because people are gonna have to prep for their own team as well as his if they want to stand a chance, because if they forget a mon in their squad as well that could very well sweep through them, then they're kind of fucked against Gio. And Chimpact agreed to this trade because he'd been wanting a Ghost and Steel type all season, and even though he already had Pythagoras, he had been talking about this with Gio since week 4 for Decidueye, assuming that it ended up getting dropped. So he figured that he'd still trade it to Gio, and also because he felt like that Decidueye is still a good mon for him. So I'm hoping that it works out for Chimpact as well. Also gives him some nice defogs. I feel like that's gonna be great for Chimpact. Even though he has decent hazard removal already, I think that's just gonna help having another defog user. And Decidueye is a very versatile mon, so hopefully this works out for him. As I said though, he really only said he wanted it for a ghost type, and it's also an offensive ghost type as well, not just having to rely on being defensive such as Pythagoras, who is mostly a defensive mon. It has some offense to it definitely, but it's mostly a defensive Pokemon overall. Next up though, we got Gator, coach of the Florida Gators, and he's dropping Heracross and Kamala for Ferrothorn and Blastoise. I think that Heracross and Kamala weren't really doing too much on his team, and Gator can agree with that. He said they weren't doing shit in the rest of his matchups, and personally, I think that's going to be great for him, though, picking up Blastoise and Ferrothorn, who are much better bulky mons than Kamala necessarily was, and also Ferrothorn is still a great physical offensive mon. It's not as good as Heracross was, but to be fair, he doesn't really need the physical offense on his team necessarily. Also, Blastoise replaces the Rapid Spinner Kamala, which is going to be great for him, and he said that the main reason, though, besides all of those, were the fact that he really wanted another bulky spinner that was bulkier than Kamala, and also another option for setting up hazards, and now he doesn't have to rely on Pikamuku Whimsicott for water and grass types, so that's going to be really nice. I think Ferrothorn's also a great hazard stacker, especially because it gets rocks and spikes, and also even Leech Seed, which even though it's not technically a hazard, it still is great to just set that, and Ferrothorn and Whimsicott now doesn't have to just be his only Leech Seeder on his team. But yeah, that's it for this trade with Gator. And finally, we have John, coach of the New Orleans Pelipers, and he is dropping Sigilyph for Piloswine. Now, the main reason that he wanted to pick this up is because he felt like he really needed a ground type on his team. And Piloswine has decent bulk, especially with the Eviolite, and also gives him a Stealth Rocker. It's solid offensively, especially for a middle stage evolution, and even as a very great typing. He said it feels like it pairs well with the rest of his draft. I couldn't agree more. Also, the fact that he didn't need a second Psychic type along with Uxie, and didn't feel like it did anything that Uxie couldn't do for his team already. So he's hoping that this will pull through for him, especially because he's never gotten to use Mamoswine in the format. So he's hoping that the baby version of it is going to pull through. And no, I don't mean Swinub, because no one's going to draft Swinub. So technically, Piloswine would be the baby version between the two. That is it, though, for this week's transactions. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like down below. Hopefully, though, if there's a trade that hasn't happened by now, it will happen within the next week. So I'm going to get out of here, though. It's been your boy, AA Ron 2 for 20, signing out. Peace out, you guys.